Hey folks, Kevin the editor here. This is the second part of several from the Polk County Chamber of Commerce's candidate forum held on Tuesday evening, April 23rd, 2024 at the Cedartown Performing Arts Center. We continue with this part with County Commission District 1 candidate questions through the end of their time. For those who want to enjoy it live, there's a second chance to watch the candidate forum on Thursday, April 25th, 2024 from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Rockmart Theatre. Grab a beverage, get comfy, and don't feel bad for pausing for bathroom breaks. Let's get into part 2.
Our next question is, how do you plan to engage with and represent the diverse interests and perspectives of all residents? We'll begin with James.
Polk County is growing. We have an influx of Latino Americans coming in. We have new people moving in from Atlanta. There are several minority-owned businesses here in Polk County. I've tried to work with some of them in my rental business and bring them in to do work on various occasions. There are several churches in here that have expanded. The Roman Catholic Church has went from being a small enclave to being a very large capacity church over here on the west end of the county. And I think meeting with people like local religious leaders, some of the business owners, and bringing them into a dialogue, maybe a community advisory board, to find out what they think about the county, let them know what we're planning, get their input on ways that we can reach out to the Hispanic community or to people coming in from other areas that are developing houses, building houses or developing the subdivisions and want to open businesses here. I always try to go out and meet the community. I go out and knock on doors, shake hands, talk to people. I want to know what they think. And I think opening an advisory board for citizens to come in and participate, but an application to become an advisor, say every 6 months you change out a group. That way you keep their hand on the pulse of the community and you'll understand better what the people want and be better able to represent them. Thank you.
Thank you. Debbie?
This question kind of goes with the last question in my mind. If you got your community organizations, then that's how you bring the people together that are diverse and know what their interests are. So, if you got a county commissioner out there and he's involved in those organizations and we've got, these diverse interests in our county with different, types of people, then that's where you would be able to, control that and plan and engage with people what they should be doing. Now, the second part of that, perspective of all residents, that in my mind, that tells me, okay, the one that I'm interested in is what is the perspective of our seniors, okay? Our seniors live, some people in Polk County, some seniors live basically on Social Security. Now that is very hard. And so in my mind, we should, and I think it's the county's obligation to help those people and maybe give them breaks where they can, okay? I'm looking at the school tax for seniors. I'm not so sure that while we can't eliminate that for seniors, it's done in other counties. And when you get to be elderly, certain things become important to you and certain things are not important. And so we need to look at those things and try to help them make it easier for them to live in an economy that we have today. So that's my statement.
Thank you. Michael?
So I think communication is the key for engagement and representative of the diverse interest and perspective of all residents. I think everyone is equally important, and I'm not naive enough to sit up here and think that my perspective is the only perspective that matters. There again, I think if we communicate into the communities, into the cities, that everybody matters. and I'm willing to talk to anybody about anything, but because perspectives do matter. And I told somebody the other day that, you know, this board gets to make very important decisions. And if you think I'm a subject matter expert on everything, I'm not. But I will tell you, there are enough people in this community, in the citizen body here, somebody is. And so if I'm elected county commissioner, you can rest assured that if I don't know something, even if I do, the perspective of others will definitely be sought, just because there's always somebody smarter than you out there. So perspectives, I'm all about hearing all of them. Communication is key, and I just feel like on all topics, that communication piece is very important to reach everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hubbard?
I've looked at this question so many times, I think I've overanalyzed it, but in Polk County, obviously we have 6 districts. So when I read this question, I almost feel like we're missing something if we're not representing the diverse interests and perspectives of all residents, because the whole purpose of us qualifying in a district is, yes, to represent that district, but it's at large, so we can all vote for the direction, right? So that they should be engaging, hopefully, with the citizens of each district. And I guess the question comes to is, how do we encourage those people to be active participants within our government? And that's going to be the tough part, right? Because, you know, a lot of times it's easy for us to say certain things, but then to actually act, sometimes it's hard for us to get it because we've got lives, right? I mean, we go to work, we've got things at home, we've got activities, etc., which makes it hard. So in my mind, I'm trying to figure out how we can incorporate people back into the conversation. And that's something that we all need to do a better job of trying to encourage people to be active. That's why I stick and try to encourage the youth now to be involved. Don't wait to be reactionary. You know, a lot of times in government, that's what it seems like we're always doing, is we're trying to put a Band-Aid on something instead of looking for the future. Let's make and spend a tad bit more that's going to get us 10 years versus putting a Band-Aid on it that's going to get us through a month. Because again, that's not fiscal responsibility. So we're not doing the taxpayer any good, and we're only putting it out until it happens again, which if we put a Band-Aid on it, it is. So again, we've got to figure out ways to encourage people to be involved. And I hope that this process is, thank you for coming, because obviously you're encouraged enough that you're showing up to ask questions. That's what we need more of, and how do we embody that going forward is very important, especially with big decisions coming up, because they've mentioned the county, the growth is coming, we know it. The question is, are we in position to be ready for that with controlled growth? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is, how do you feel about pursuing state and federal grants? We'll begin with James.
As I referenced earlier, the county commission already engages in looking for outside grants. Working with people like Trey Kelly or Jason Abnett-Tardy, we can continue to get state money to come into Polk County and federal money. But one of the things I think that we need to look at if we're going to apply for a grant is see what the grant entails. Sometimes they'll give you a block grant of money, but then they'll put a bunch of restrictions on it. If we get a grant from the federal government, I want the county to be able to use it for the purposes that we see fit. It may be a block grant. It may be able to be used for road repair, bridges, but I don't want any caveats to be attached to it. Like, for instance, the Green New Deal. I don't know how you feel about that, but honestly, I think Polk County's doing just fine the way it is with regards to our development, and that we have people in here that are serious about the way we develop, but I don't want somebody coming in here putting some type of inane restriction on page 42 of the rule that we've never heard of. So if we're going to get money, let's make sure what we're getting before we take and accept their cash. Thank you.
Thank you. Debbie?
My answer to this is going to be short and sweet. I love them. I mean, I don't think the county could operate without state grants, good state grants, and funding from the government, federal government. That's it.
Thank you. Michael?
So I'll tell you, I'm pro grants, if it makes sense for Polk County. In fact, I've worked with both federal and state grants in my past. The good thing about grants is they're usually project specific, and then they usually have a matching revenue amount that the county has to match. So what that allows is the county gets the bulk of the money in a grant, they match a small portion. That also leaves money in the coffers to do other stuff with in the county. So talking about infrastructure, I lived the infrastructure life for the last 25 years, and there's no way that you can maintain this entire county or any county per se without some type of grant. I mean, that's fact. The county gets a grant every year for road paving. It's based, the formula is based on mileage and the amount of citizens that live in this county. So with that being said, you're going to live the grant life, but what you don't want to do is get so, you don't want to be so deep in grants that when the grants go away, you have no operating money. So the goal is get your grants, get your stuff started, and then figure out a way in your budget, in your daily operating budget to sustain what you started. But I am pro-grant, and I would also like to see, if elected, I hate to say that word, if elected, I feel like I'm in Washington, but I would also like to see what grants are available, what projects Polk County have in the coffers that would benefit Polk County project-wise and grant-wise. So, thank you.
Thank you. Jordan?
I'm gonna keep building off the last one. I stopped with controlled growth. Grants, I mean, obviously, it's a win-win. I mean, Polk County has X amount of dollars coming in, right? So every year, if you've watched the county budget, it's a very tight process, right? We're talking very tight. So much so that we're in that area of, are we gonna start using fund balance back and forth? And the question you have to ask is, the grants obviously is a win-win, but again, matching funds are important, but you also have to have the staff to keep those things rolling, right? So we're in that position, right? So we're trying to figure out how we move forward. So anytime you take a grant from the federal or state, obviously there's gonna be strings attached. Can we handle that? And if we can, and we've got the staff to do it, then absolutely, we'll take your money, which is gonna help Polk County. Again, it's gonna come back to the conversation when it comes to funding. What are we doing going forward to make sure that we can get revenues up? And that's a serious conversation we've gotta have in the near future, and it's a reality of every government across America, especially in the times that we live. So state and federal grants, I mean, it's simple. If we can make it work, let's roll with it.
Thank you. Our next question is, what is your vision for the future development in the county and ensuring it remains a beautiful place to work and live? And just for clarification, this is in reference to outside of the city limits. We will begin with Debbie.
My vision for living in Polk County and for future development outside of the city limits would be for more development, but not development that would strangle the county, development that would attract more people maybe. But there again, I love Polk County and I really don't want to tell a lot of people about it because I know they don't want to come here and live. So, but also, and I just get back to agricultural because my vision for Polk County outside the city limits with as much county as we have would be to develop that into farming and things like that. I know we need senior housing, that's a big one, or will be in the future for a lot of people. So we just need to keep it as spread out as we can, but still make it develop pieces of it that will serve our community better, because our generation is changing. I mean, 10 years from now, we'll need things that we didn't even know we needed for a lot of our citizens. So we have room to develop it, And we just need to be smart about it and make it and still make it attractive for people to want to come live here.
Thank you. Michael?
So we're on the development question, right?
Yes, sir.
So we all know that, development is coming. How to ensure Polk County remains a beautiful place to work and live. I believe that goes back to controlled growth. I believe that there's an idea you can set up development areas that will only allow commercial development, residential development, agriculture development, and I believe if we can get those, and they may already be in place, but if we can get those areas, those zones set up to where we know that there's portions of Polk County that will always remain beautiful, I think that's very important. You're gonna have the things that are developed commercially, you're gonna have residential developments, and you're gonna have agriculture developments, I feel like, and then you're going to places out in what they call country, where people just wanna live and not be bothered. And I feel like if you control those areas to a point, it won't really hurt the live, work, and play attitude that we get to have here in Polk County. Thank you.
Thank you. Jordan?
All right, so this is an interesting one, especially outside the city limits. Kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the access to infrastructure. If we want that growth to exist, we're going to go back to the conversation of building the infrastructure so they can come. Again, I'm a proponent of controlled growth. I never want to see a hiring situation happen here where everything happens so quick and then they're like, let's pump the brakes and figure this out. I want to make sure that we're all working in the same direction, which again would be great if we got those intergovernmental agreements. I mean, not agreements, but intergovernmental meetings going in, so we are communicating, so we all are working on the same page. But again, if you want expansion, especially in industry in the county, there's two things they're going to need. They're going to need access to infrastructure, being sewer, right, which they're not going to have on the major highways, and they're going to need fire protection. So those are two things that obviously will cost money up front, and is that a conversation we want to have to make sure that that growth can come? Again, if we're going to provide for them, we're providing tools to make sure those folks can be successful. But we spend a lot of time talking about industry, and I'm not against industry by no means, but the one thing we don't do enough of is talk about small business owners who create a bulk of our workforce in Polk County. They don't get those incentives like the major industries do. And I would love to have a conversation about small business owners and what we can do to make sure they're successful and not just the major industries that we're always trying to recruit, because most of those small businesses are invested here, they're not going anywhere, and they've been here, yet we're not doing enough for them, but we're doing anything for industry to get them in.
Thank you. James?
We still have a lot of raw and developed land in Polk County, and there are a lot of generational wealth here in the county because of landowners. You have people that have been living here 6 and 7 generations that own 500, 600 acres of land, and the families have put it in trust, and some of them are not going to sell it. You also have people like Koch Industries that have come in here. They took over the feed plant when it had that accident 5-6 years ago, and they also have a chicken operation over here off of Collin Valley, where they're growing poultry for slaughter. The county, about 40% of it is on well water. It doesn't have county water. And there's going to be a lot of working to do to try to get that infrastructure built up. Some of the topography of this area is mountainous with a basalt rock foundation and slate, and it's making it very hard to dig out areas to put in pipe. It's going to be very expensive. So to look to the future, we're going to have a development plan, and we're going to have to work with the local community leaders and the local businesses and the farmers in this area to come out with water resource management projects and ways to effectively use land and to develop housing and business in conjunction with our agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is, What are your thoughts on putting the EMS contract out for bid regularly? We'll begin with Debbie.
This question's a good question. It's, and the way I think about it is, why wouldn't you? Like, you know, I understand that we haven't bidded out the EMS contract in a long, long time. And so I would say to that, well, if we haven't done it, what are we missing? How are we overpaying? Do we have something? Is there something out there better that we could have? And you don't know that until you put a bid out. So what is wrong with bidding something out on a regular basis, is what the question says. Doesn't mean you have to change what you're doing. You just have to know what's available that the county doesn't have today that it could have tomorrow in this area. So I just don't see why someone would not bid out this contract at various, you know, year after year if we needed to. It doesn't mean we have to take the contracts, but we just have to see what's out there.
Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, so EMS, from my understanding right now, I believe it's Redmond has the, Advent has the current, I guess, contract, if you will. I don't think that costs the taxpayers any money. But, and I think Advent does a really good job. But with any service that the county's provided, and with any bid, if you will, that the county provides, I feel like sometimes it may be time to take a look at all bids, if we're gonna call it a bid. That's a service. But I'm not against bidding out or reaching out for different services or seeing what's out there, as long as it makes sense for Polk County. Like I said, I understand Advent does a good job right now, but I'm for taking care of the taxpayers. And like I said, I don't think that contract, correct me if I'm wrong, some of you other commissioners, costs the taxpayers money. But if there's other things out there, I'm not against going and checking that. You know, so with that, I don't know why we wouldn't, but I don't know why we would at the same time. So I don't know enough about that contract to really dig in deep, but I will tell you that as any contract the county has or is entered into, it's worth taking a look at from time to time.
Thank you. Jordan?
Forgive me for not remembering post-COVID. To me, I still call them Floyd and Redmond, right? So I want to start with, I talk about this a lot in bureaucracy when we're talking about trying to streamline services to save the taxpayer money. The good thing about Polk County, we are very lucky to have Floyd and Redmond competing for our business. Now, I'm a cactus at heart, okay? My brother says I squeak when I walk. To bid it out is going to cost you money, okay? There is some expense to bid that out. But two, since I was appointed, I've had 0 complaints on EMS, not one. Now, I'm not saying there's not issues out there. I've heard of none. Only thing I've heard that's been positives of response time is great. The service they provide is exceptional. They go above their contract requirements, so they're doing more than they promised us. In my book, I think, why wouldn't we? Because now we have Floyd and Redmond still competing together. We benefit from that, and the taxpayer pays $0 for that service. That to me is pretty hard to read.
Thank you, Jordan. James?
I think when it comes to any government contract, there needs to be a term limit and a renewal review process. Now, you can sign a contract with one provider, say 3 years, and you can set it up so at the end of the 3-year period, say 90 days before, that you have a public review of the service. Open the website up, the county government, for input from the voters, from the people that it serves. And if you don't feel that the service provider is giving you what you need, then you rebid the contract out for somebody else to come in. Now, they said at present that it doesn't cost us anything. Well, that may change in the future. The provider may be increasing their rates of service for the people that are receiving the service, like ambulance service. I know that my dad, his age is 81, and he has a heart condition, and we've had to use an ambulance several times to take him to the hospital because of his condition. And the billing is covered by his insurance, which fortunately, by the grace of God, is very good from having been a union employee for 30 years with the electricians workers union. But some people don't have that. So we have to ask ourselves, is the provider giving us what we're paying for? Is it worth the money? So there's nothing wrong with setting up a review and letting the people talk to you about it and then make a decision if you want to keep going in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is, what are your thoughts on re-entry services that ensure individuals experiencing incarceration get services to reduce recidivism? Which is reincarceration for anybody that's out there typing in Google.
I am for services. Now, I'm not for giving taxpayer money to these people, but I am for services for these people because I have a client that I talked to the other day. Her son is incarcerated, and the only thing he worries about is how, when he gets out of prison, what is he gonna do? That's what he worries about. Now, he's probably not gonna get out of prison for about 10 years, but he still worries about the fact that no one will want to hire him. And he asked his mother to make sure that she doesn't sell his truck, because to him, he feels like if he has a truck, he will have transportation and he can hopefully provide for himself on getting him some kind of money. So my point is, it is an issue for these people. Services that we could provide them to help them re-enter our environment that we live in versus what they've been living in for all this time, to me is should be provided. And because, you know, they worry about it a lot more than we do. So, and I don't know if it's possible to provide it inside the prisons, you know, and so that they're prepared to get out. Maybe that would be the answer. I don't know how prison works, but I do know it's an issue, and if there's anything that we can do, we should try to help them.
Thank you. Michael?
So the reentry services, I don't know a whole lot about what that is. I know a little bit about some other programs that are very similar. I know we have drug court, we have different avenues for folks that have been in the system, if you will. I'm not necessarily against helping anybody. There is a problem there. I remember when I was at Polk County, the guys had installed a driveway in an area of the county. I'll let that remain nameless, but an area of the county, a young gentleman had gotten out of jail, and his family had set him up a place to live, and we put his driveway in, and I went by and looked at the work, and 2 days later somebody called me and said the guy's house burned down, just like that. So there's definitely a need for some assistance when you start pulling these people back into society. How we fund that, I'll be straight up honest with you, I don't have a clue. But that is something I would look into. I see Jonathan Blackman out here, and he deals with this every day. And so he would be a resource to kind of guide us possibly and tell us how to get these folks back into the system. Do they deserve a second chance? Absolutely, we all do. So with that being said, I can't tell you to what level my support would be, but I do feel like there are people that deserve that other chance. So with that.
Thank you. Jordan?
Mr. Grisman, is this based off funding? Is this question based off funding? Because in my mind, I feel like the federal funding that they had in place for this is maybe going away. Is that why the question was asked, maybe?
I'm not privy as to why it was submitted anonymously.
I got you.
However, I do believe, from my personal knowledge, I think the county does have a program in place currently.
And I want to say it's federally funded, and I could be wrong. That funding may be going away, is maybe the question. So, one, obviously the program works. If you talk to anybody, the program works. So if that's the case, we owe it to people in Polk County to make sure that we can provide that service to them, to make sure that we're keeping them out of that system. Now, the question is, when it comes to money, and I think that's probably the issue, is can we allocate the money to produce it, to make sure that it can continue? Well, if the system's working and it's keeping people outside of our jail, then it sounds like something that we need to continuously invest in. So that'll be a conversation that I'd love to have to make sure we can figure that out, especially in budget season, to make sure that's happening. Because again, less people in the jail is good for all, but and like they mentioned, we owe it to folks to give them a second chance, especially in trying to make sure that they are productive once they leave there. So, thanks, sir.
Thank you. James?
The state of Georgia has several programs within the prison system for post-release rehabilitation. They have housing programs, and my understanding, the county sheriff's department is working to get people in programs that are short-term incarcerated. You have Mosaic Place and One More Polk here in Polk County that provide substance abuse services and mental health services. I was a prison officer for 20 years with the U.S. Department of Corrections, and I've seen long-term incarceration, the effect it has on a person. The longer you're in there, in that environment, the more detached you become from the outside world. We have psychological services, education programs, and vocational training programs. They're really programs if you get a college education, albeit you had to pay for it, or if you could get a grant to come in for it. But you need to look at the state level programs, look at the people when they're coming out, what they're gonna need. Are they still drug addicted? When they were in there, did they get over their drug addiction? Is that what put them in the first place? What type of crime did they commit? This is a very particular subject for a lot of people, because let's say you've got a sex offender. Most people don't want a sex offender living next door to them. I know it's distasteful to talk about, but these are the kind of people that are getting out of prison 10, 20 years in, and they have to have somewhere to go. You can incentivize local businesses to offer jobs to certain types of offenders, say nonviolent drug offenders or petty criminals that have rehabilitated and are currently released after having served their time. That's one of the things that the federal government does. But this is a very deep subject, and I think it needs a lot of consideration, and it takes the community, both private and public partnerships, to make this work. Thank you.
Thank you. In an effort to remain transparent, I am going to disclose that we are skipping the next question. The question was, how do you plan to support expected growth in regards to public services and funding? The candidates have all covered that fairly well, and so for the sake of conserving time, we're going to move on to the next question. Do you think that special consideration should be given to Polk County businesses when purchasing or contracting services? We'll begin with Michael.
The answer to that question is yes, I absolutely do, to a point. As long as those numbers and that amount of money and whatever services that they're providing benefits Polk County. So yes, I can't disagree that Polk County contractors and things could have a preference. As long as we, setting that preference needs to be capped. We don't want to cut our nose off, spite our face per se. We want to make sure that even then we're getting the low bid. But I agree. I don't have a problem with local folks getting local work, as long as the local folks are willing to do the work at the price that they've agreed to do it at, and it benefits the county 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. Jordan?
This one goes back to what I was saying earlier. Absolutely, right? Again, we're always talking about industry and bringing folks in, which is a great thing for the future, but it's also important that we're protecting the people that are here. If we've got contractors that can do the work and they're within budget, absolutely, because again, these people are invested here and they're going to spend that money here. The thing about outside contractors, they may be cheaper, okay? But they're not going to live here, they're not going to spend their money here, they're going to take their money and go to another community. I'd rather, even if the percent was a little bit higher, support them because we know that money will end up back in Polk County. It's a win-win.
Thank you. James?
The state of Georgia has a law that gives preference to in-state vendors regarding contracts over out-of-state vendors. It's at the Georgia Department of Administrative Services website. If an out-of-state vendor and an in-state vendor both apply for a contract and it's a tied bid, then the preference goes to the in-state vendor. And the same thing should be used with local talent here. Carpenters, brick masons, cement workers, electricians. If they have the scale and scope of ability to do county contracts, then they should be given preferential treatment, like Mr. Hubbard said. Let's keep the money in the county. Let's work with local people. Now, the contract should be an open bid contract. It's a secret bid, and the lowest bid gets it. But we should still give a preference to our own people first. That way we make sure that the money stays in the county and that the people here are local and understand what the government wants and what the people want. Let's say you're gonna do some work on a public school. Well, that money's gonna come out of the county school budget, and it's also gonna involve the county commission because there's gonna be permitting involved. But you've got a local contractor that's been working with the development board here in the county and with the permitting board. It shouldn't be that hard to get it in and get it done quick. Thank you.
Thank you. Debbie?
You don't even need to start that box, absolutely.
Thank you. Our final question for District 1. How do you plan to combat turnover for county employees? Begin with Michael.
Has to be an easy one for me, since I was one for a long time. But I don't know if you guys know it, but I'm about to tell you if you don't. The number one most important asset in Polk County government is the employees, period. I'll disagree with anybody that says otherwise. That is the number one asset. Those guys are the real rock stars. It's not us, I promise you. They are the real rock stars. They're in, day out. I tell you, I will support the employees 100% to ensure that they have what they need to do their job and to help move Polk County forward. Not only the employees, that goes back all the way back to public safety. I will support 100% public safety. I will ensure that they have everything they need to make this county safer. We could take this one topic and talk for days on it, but you have to let those employees know what their true value is. Everybody wants to make as much money as they can. We all know that we have budgets. We all know that we have steps and increases and things that kind of govern what our employees make. But I think the key is them understanding and knowing what their true value is, and it's not always about money. We could go deep into this, but I just feel like to combat that turnover rate, you let them know what they mean and give them the tools that they need to do their job. Thank you.
Thank you. Jordan?
completely agree. After the appointment was made, let me backpedal. The forum, when they were looking for candidates for one, after the forum, I went to Michael and I said the same thing, dude. We've got to make sure we're protecting people like you to stay here. We need people in Polk County to want to be here and want to work here and want to live here. But government in general, and the thing is, I used to say in the city all the time, the commission gets the credit, but it's the employees that make it work. It's the department heads that encourage their employees to show up every day, a place that they want to be a part of. And I think that's important. They appointed me on a Thursday. I went to work on Friday, and I've worked my way through almost all of Polk County government. I haven't made it through every position, but I've worked really hard to try to figure out what's the issues and what's the morale like. Because in the day, I feel like we're failing if people don't show up to Polk County government and they're proud to work for Polk County. So if we're not doing that, we've got to fix that. Because again, every community has the same issues, right? Retention. Teachers and school systems have the same issues, retention. And we've got to make sure that we're wanting people to stay here that's invested here. And to do that, though, if morale's not good, they're not staying. But what we need, though, is young folks that can work the ladder and know they can get promoted within their department, so they're invested here. Because if they know and they can see that they can be at the top because they've learned their way through to make it to that top position, that's going to help morale. And that's across the board with all county positions, and I hope we can work really hard to encourage people to want to be invested here where they can see that we are hiring locals. And I'm not saying that you can't hire people from the outside. Sometimes that helps, but if you're trying to build morale for the future and you want people to be invested here, they need to know that if they start working there, they can work their way through, and they're going to want to show up every day for Polk County, and I hope they do, because like them and like everybody on the stage, I love this place. Thank you.
Thank you. James?
Paying people more money is a good way to get them to stay, but sometimes the budget doesn't allow for that. But there are other things that you can offer. For instance, education incentives. Let's say you've got some people that work for the road department that are general laborers. Maybe you could offer them an apprenticeship program with a mechanic or an electrician, so they could start working on the journeyman's license. They have developed the Polk County Vocational Training Center over here off of Collard Valley, and they're training electricians over there, crane operators, welders. That type of thing incentivizes young people to come to work for the county, because if you come in there with no experience as a general laborer, and you know that in 3 or 4 years you could be an apprentice in a welding program or a diesel mechanics program, then you have a reason to believe that you have a future here. You also have to look at the budget and find money to keep employees. There are other counties that are hiring away our people. They're hiring away our service technicians. They're hiring away our police officers or sheriff's deputies for higher pay. And honestly, I can't blame them for leaving. If you're going over here to Floyd County and you're making $1.50 more an hour as a deputy sheriff, why wouldn't you go once you've got some experience under your belt? These are just some of the things that we can look at as a way to get our people to stay and grow with the Polk County government and our public services sector. Thank you.
Thank you. Debbie?
When I read this question, I assumed that, this is assuming you can't give them a bonus and you can't give them a raise. How would I do that? So the answer to this question is the same answer that we had 25 years ago when I worked in the corporate world. You make these employees feel like they're needed and that they make a contribution. Now, how did we do it 25 years ago? We had plans and we had programs that if you made your department better, if you created something for that department, you would get American Express money. Okay, back then it was American Express travel checks. Now it would be gift cards. It doesn't have to be a big sum of money. You just have to recognize someone is doing a good job. That's usually all people want. There's people in the county that are having to do things on their own because they don't have the resources to do those, like getting better uniforms to wear, better ways to log in things in their jobs. They're creating ideas, and those ideas should translate to small significant gift cards or something. That's all the people want. They just want to know, hey, you recognize that I did a good job. And honestly, it goes a long ways.
Thank you. That concludes the questions for District 1. Running for District 1 is a reminder, incumbent Jordan Hubbard, James Vines, Debbie Connelly, and Michael Gravett.
That wraps up the second part of several of the candidate forum video coverage here on Polk Today. I'm Kevin, the editor. Thanks for tuning into this coverage from the Chamber's Candidate Forum. Make sure to check out the next part available here on polktoday.com.